because of Phyllis Schlafly and Eagle Forum that I was able to clearly define what I wanted my children's education to look like. It was in 1977, and as a young mother of two, I joined Eagle Forum and met Phyllis Schlafly when she came to Arizona to oppose the Equal Rights Amendment in the Arizona State Legislature. For many years after that, while serving in various positions in Arizona Eagle Forum, I would go to Eagle Council, where I learned so much from Phyllis and the other leaders there. Phyllis, while imparting her incredible knowledge through her amazing gift of being able to look at issues with logic and reason and then apply principles of good government to them, she taught us in ways we could understand and then take action. Education soon became one of our major issues then, and it still is today. It was because of this that by the late 1980s, I found myself homeschooling. I had decided there were definite things I wanted included in my children's education and definite things I did not want them to spend their school hours learning, as well as I wanted them in a wholesome environment. So homeschooling was my best choice. I began first by homeschooling my oldest children as they got into junior high school. The junior high school environment was not a place which reinforced my value system, so that is where I began. My goals in life had always been centered around being a wife and a stay-at-home mother. Now, by adding school teacher to it, I found this to be so fulfilling. I loved it. Soon after, I decided I wanted to have them all at home, so I pulled the others out too. As the years went by and my family grew in number, I started to teach other homeschoolers with my own in our basement. It was like a real classroom with chalkboard and desks and bulletin boards. I had other children be a part of our homeschool, as this provided a small social setting. My children were thrilled to have friends come to school each day. I felt like there was more structure, more accountability for both the teacher and the students, and it just made school more fun. Homeschooling is probably one of the hardest things a parent will ever do, but it can be one of the most rewarding. I found the difficulty was sometimes the babies and the preschoolers. I would put the baby monitor beside me in class, and then when she woke up, I'd send one of my children upstairs to get her. Then she would sit on the floor and play while we did school. Many a toddler at our house had bumps on their heads just the height of the desks as they would toddle around during class. Every day was an adventure, trying to meet the needs of everyone. But for me, this was the way to homeschool. By 1996, the conservative Arizona State Legislature, at that time, passed the most liberal charter school law in the country. What I mean by liberal is that basically what the statute said was, if you can create a good business plan and outline a curricula, you can get a charter to use state funds and create a school. I have to admit, at first, I did not even consider becoming a government school. But after a couple of years, when I saw some good charter schools start up using great curriculum and having good results, and my homeschool kept getting bigger and bigger, I thought maybe becoming a charter school would enable me to pay some people to help me and give us funds for curriculum and supplies. I thought that maybe there was a small window of opportunity that I could use the system for my little school. So in 1998, I began my first year as a charter school. My home is on a property in a county island, and the county would not let us build another structure. I had envisioned a little red schoolhouse in my backyard, but they did say I could add on to my home. So we added on 4 classrooms and 2 bathrooms, and then we used some rooms in my basement previously used for the homeschool. We used those for the school office, the teacher resource room, and the staff bathroom. We have a large backyard that served as a playground and lunch area. It was multi-level, kindergarten through 12th grade, with about 60 students that first year. I served as principal as well as a teacher, with 4 other teachers, a secretary, and a part-time music teacher. We had a school garden in the backyard, took field trips to the zoo and the science museum, much like we had done as a homeschool. We used a local church for our Christmas and patriotic programs, which we would put on each year for the parents. My youngest child at that time was a toddler, and among my secretary, my older children, and myself, she was cared for in the basement. After a few years of running the school, I realized I was not going to bed at night, as being a charter school is not just about the teaching, the curriculum, and the students. It has a business side, which is very involved and can be very time-consuming. I had a couple of friends who owned several different charter schools around the state. I asked them if they would take me under their charter, which meant they could help me with compliance issues, payroll, audits, etc. This turned out to be a great thing for me, as it freed me up to focus on the teachers, the curriculum, and the students, which is what I love the most. I also changed the school to kindergarten through 8th grade, as high school with credits and other issues required a lot of extra time. Now we had about 100 students coming to the house each day for school. By this time, I had 4 older children who were already in high school, college, or married, which left my 5 younger ones in the school. But just when you think you have everything figured out, life surprises you. I became pregnant with my 10th child at age 47. This was not in the plan. I already had a grandchild. I knew very well that infants require a lot of care, and I thought I was past that stage in life. What made this so very difficult for me was that I considered myself to still be a stay-at-home mom, first above everything else, and I knew I wanted to be there for this child just as I had been there for the previous 9. But now, running a business with so many students, how was I going to do it? Well, my great and supportive husband left his job and came home to be there for me and our little unexpected surprise. We had a couple of very intense years meeting the needs of a newborn and running the school. I have to say, though, I breastfed her as I did all the others. She never once had a bottle supplement of any kind, and I was there for her for every feeding. That might not sound like much, but I consider that to be one of my greatest accomplishments in life. Thank you. Eventually, my husband became our playground PE teacher, and our youngest, Jenna, was always with him. She was the most popular person in the school. The students loved her, and everyone wanted to play with her at recess. They also wanted to share their lunch with her, give her cookies and stuff, and we had to put a stop to that. By the way, she is now 16, and she has been a treasure. I can't imagine life without her. Sorry. Okay. Oh. Those were wonderful years with my husband and children, all of us together each day in school. We were learning and working with teachers who shared the same vision of education. When I interviewed teachers then and still now, the first thing I ask is, do you really love children? Children know and feel much from their teachers. They spend the best hours of their day with them, and I think children deserve teachers who truly love them and teachers who love their jobs. The next question I ask potential teachers is, do you see teaching as partly a calling? Teaching can be thankless, time-consuming, and not super profitable financially, so you have to have other reasons to want to be in the classroom. By 2014, the charter school, Pathfinder Academy, had received an A rating every year by the Arizona Department of Education. We had never advertised, and we had a waiting list each year. The school organization I'd put the school under 16 years before, now called EdKey, came to me and asked me if I would like to get the school out of my home. They said they would build a school for us. My youngest by this time was in the 6th grade, the only child I had left in the school, and I decided that maybe I could leave the house now. The architect asked me what I would like the school to look like, and I told him Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home. And that is exactly what we got. We have a beautiful red brick, white pillared, colonial-style building among the saguaro cactus in the Arizona desert. I actually think Thomas Jefferson would be pleased. When you walk in the office area, there's a picture of Thomas Jefferson and one of Monticello on the wall, and there's also his quote, "I cannot live without books." The school has a big 30-foot-high octagonal dome similar to Monticello's, where we have hung about a dozen very large historical paintings to remind the students of their heritage and what it means to be an American. I call the dome the Jefferson Rotunda, as it reminds me of the Capitol. Having a charter school has given me the opportunity and resources to create curriculum for the students, which I felt was important to their education. We use a system of intense phonics instruction so every child learns to read. We teach cursive handwriting in the middle of 2nd grade, and we teach character education. I've always felt that American school children were lacking in vocabulary schools, so our students master the Greek and Latin roots of our language, which opens up vocabulary in many ways. This was so important to me that I created a method by which our students, beginning in 3rd grade, gradually master, and I mean master. They can recite the Greek and Latin roots with their definitions, and they know 450 by the 7th grade. One of the very most important things I felt we did in the homeschool was to teach the wonderful stories of history, which create a love of country and patriotism, and we still do that today, so that they do not forget the people, places, and events of history. I created several hundred short history poems, which are a quick reminder to the students of what happened in American and world history. The students also memorized great quotes of amazing Americans, such as John Paul Jones when his ship was lost, "I have not yet begun to fight," or Nathan Hale's last words before they hung him, "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." Also, the students memorized the words on the monuments and memorials of our country, such as "Equal justice under law" on the Supreme Court building, and on the tomb of the unknown soldier, "Here lies in honored glory an American soldier known but to God." I absolutely love poetry, and hearing children recite poetry is the best. Great words of authors who have written about their experiences uplift and ennoble our lives. I found back in my homeschool that children would memorize the poem the night before, say it the next day, and then they forget it the next day after that. What we do now is the students at every grade level are given 4 to 6 classic poems at the beginning of each month. They can choose 2 to memorize and recite to the class during the month. But they are not left to memorize the poems on their own, because in class each day, the poems for the month are spoken out loud together as a class with the teacher. This makes memorization easier, and we find that they not only know the 2 poems that are to recite to the class, they know all of them. When I found this method to be very effective, I created a program called Say It to Know It, where poems, Greek and Latin roots, math, facts, and measurements, countries, states, and capitals, geography, math, and science terms with their definitions are spoken out loud together with the class every day. By doing this, it is unbelievable how much goes into long-term memory. It just stays with them. I have former students who can still recite many poems and other things they learned, even years later after they have left the school. Something else we've been able to do is to take our 7th and 8th grade students on historical trips back here to the east, where the real history is. We just took a trip this past summer. We went for 17 days through 12 states, from Baltimore to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, seeing almost 75 historic places. I started this the first year as a charter school, as I felt that after learning about American history, it is important to go to the sacred places where these great things happened. The trips we've taken over these years have created a love of history. We've been able to do this because of our extracurricular activity donation in Arizona. Anyone who pays Arizona income tax can give a donation of $400 per married couple and $200 per single person to a public school and receive it as a tax credit on the amount of tax they pay to the state. It is like saying, this money or tax I have to pay to the state anyway, but I choose to give it to a school for their extracurricular activities. This has helped many students take this trip who might never have had the opportunity. Today, Pathfinder Academy has over 400 students with 2 classes of each kindergarten through 6th grade and 1 class each of 7th and 8th grades. We have a 4-day school week, so our families have more time to spend together. My staff has grown to 16 classroom teachers, an assistant principal, a registrar, an office receptionist, a health aide, 2 PE teachers, a music teacher, and 2 special education teachers. We still do not advertise, and we have a waiting list each year. I'm very grateful for this, as all I ever wanted was just a few other families who shared the same vision of education for their children as I did for mine. A few years ago, my registrar came to me and said she got a call from a woman who asked if she could put her child's name on our waiting list before the child was born. The woman said she knew the sex of the child as well as the name. I told the registrar to tell her we have to have a name, a birth date, and a sex, and she couldn't be sure even on the sex, as I knew that could be wrong. But when the child was 2 weeks old, we received a pre-enrollment form for her, which put her on our list for 5 years until kindergarten. Our students do take the same Arizona Merit State tests as the other public school children take. Our Arizona State standards must be covered in our curriculum, as they are what the state test is based upon. But we are free to accomplish this however we choose. I like to think we don't limit ourselves to the standards. We do ever so much more. Our students have always done well on the tests. I would be remiss if I told you that charter schools enjoy the same independence and freedom as back in 1996. We have seen over the years gradually the attempts, some successful and some not, to make charter schools look more and more like regular public schools. Thank goodness for great state legislators who each year during the legislative session help us keep the choice of charter schools. There are approximately 550 charter schools in Arizona with over 200,000 students attending them. There are art schools, music schools, back to basic schools, classical education schools, STEM schools, and STEAM schools. I remember the day many years ago when my local public school district, which is the largest school district in Arizona, ran a full-page ad for enrollment in the newspaper. It was unbelievable because for years they were the only choice. Charter schools have made public schools in Arizona step it up in many ways, as there is definitely competition for students and so many choices for parents. Each morning at Pathfinder Academy, our classes begin with the pledge to the flag, followed by the singing of a patriotic song. And then there is a minute of silence where students can think quietly and prepare themselves for the day. Students do not wear uniforms, but we have a modest dress code. I have many parents who are open to uniforms, and that is always a possibility, but I like to teach the students that people who are responsible are those who enjoy the most freedom. As long as they are responsible with the rules and the dress code, they can keep the most freedom in their dress and activities at school. I am still the principal, and I still teach part of the day. I teach 7th grade math and 7th and 8th grade history and the Constitution. I think the fun at school is in the classroom, not in the principal's office, so I still have to teach. I love that I can send a class of 8th graders out into the world each year who have read the Constitution with me, discussed and learned about each part, and then hopefully understand and appreciate the genius of the founders who wrote it. We do not bus students to school. Our parents drive them to and from, so when it comes to field trips, we rent a bus and a driver from other schools. A few years ago, our students returned from science camp on a bus, and I went out to the bus driver to thank her. She, with tears in her eyes, told me that while driving back the 2 hours from camp, the 5th and 6th graders she was transporting suddenly, on their own, began singing patriotic songs. She couldn't believe how many songs they knew and all the verses. She told me she didn't even know kids knew those songs today, and she was very touched by it and felt that there was hope in the world. Just last week, our Senate Education Chairman told me that she had attended a county fair in the state where she ran a booth. She would ask children questions about history, and they would receive a piece of candy if they could answer. She said there was a young boy in 4th grade who could answer every question she asked. She was so impressed. But then he started asking her questions to see what she knew. She asked him how he knew so much about history, and he told her he had learned at his school, Pathfinder Academy. I believe I'm the luckiest woman on the planet. I've been able to do what I love, with whom I love, my own children and others. I get to work with people each day of whom I have chosen and who share my vision of what school should be. My little window of opportunity has turned into over 20 years, and I'm so grateful. We have children of former students who attend now. My 10 children are all out of the school, but I still have reasons to be there. I now have grandchildren in the school, and well, they are my best reasons of all.